Hello, everyone. I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to yet another book study. Tonight, if you're tuning in or catching this on the replay, you are here in the ground floor for the beginning of our study from The Dust Returned by Ray Bradbury. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is our October, our Halloween special. We've been, last 2 years, we've done something by Bradbury during October. We did Something Wicked This Way Comes at first, and then last year we did the Halloween tree. And this year, From the Dust Returns, maybe we'll do the October Country or something like that next year. We'll see. But it's going to be fun, and we'll get into that in a moment. And letting people get the notification and come on in. We got a few people watching already, but let me go ahead and welcome, without further ado, my co-host for this time around. This is not Al couldn't join us this time around, so we do have a very special guest, though. Somewhat akin to the book himself. Here we go. Mr. Al Rack. Welcome, sir.
I don't have a voice for Al Rack, so I'm just going to be me.
Kilo voice or anything?
I was like thinking, it's like, what voice could I use? And it's like, well, the best I was like, it's like, hey, have you seen my girlfriend Charlotte? That's about all I really had.
Yeah, hey, that works. Whatever. Whatever.
So it was a little bit of a spider joke.
Whatever, that works. Welcome to the chat here. Got Mr. Daniel Heron. Welcome. Team Ghost Planet 2.0. It's a shorter name again. You changed it up again, Melissa. But great to see you there, Melissa and Jake. Horizon Talker. Welcome. My dear sound engraver, who is placed my chair outside. That's okay. I'm in a fold-out chair right now. We're good. I've been loaning her my chair for her streams, and
little trouble.
Oh no, I forgot to pick it up today. So we're good. We are all good. Welcome to Joshua V as well. Frank Skiasa, always butchering and always apologizing for butchering. You're probably more tired of hearing people apologizing for butchering it than you are tired of just hearing it butchered. But anyway,
Siaka.
Sure, whatever. But got definitely more people watching, but they'll join in or not join in and just listen in. That's fine too. So, what do you think, Al? Well, I'm going to introduce the book in a second, but it's a very different change of pace, right?
It is quite different. No lightsabers, no dark side. Well, there's a dark side, but yeah, just like I said, just the first few trying to get a hold of the overall feel.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most very short chapters. I'm like, some of them are like only like 2 pages with very, very quick introductions of some characters, and I'm just kind of waiting for a few story elements to kind of coalesce.
Well, as I said,
a little bit.
Yeah. So it's a novel. He calls it a novel, but it's very much a novel in stories. And the best way to really think about this is liken it to the original Charles Addams cartoons of the Addams Family.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to that. Now, Charles Addams technically was already kind of playing with his idea of the Addams Family and stuff like that when he and Bradbury met up. At the end of the book, in the paperback version anyway, probably in the hardcover as well, there is a little small piece by Bradbury talking about how he came up with the family and whatnot. And they are called the Elliots, and they live in October Country. They do show up in some other of his works, but they've been in his head forever. And it was a project that he and Charles Addams were supposed to work on together. Charles Addams was supposed to illustrate it. And this is actually the thumbnail you saw there. So the story he tells, let me just start at the beginning. He was writing stories for Weird Tales magazine, the great Pulp Fiction magazine back in the day. And they were getting kind of tired of him submitting a lot of his haunted tales because they wanted traditional ghosts, traditional horror, make the vampire a vampire and the, this and that. And he was wanting to play with different ideas like spooky friendly family or something, something, different, speculative, and really kind of play with things. And they didn't really like that so much. So he wrote the homecoming chapter in this book, which we didn't get to in our chapters tonight, but you'll read it for the next time. It's a big chapter kind of welcoming the whole family home. And we really get to meet a lot of different people. And it was actually published in Mademoiselle magazine. They loved it. And they actually made a whole October issue out of it. And Charles Addams did they commissioned him to do this big, huge 2-spread art. And I've got one of the original. I've got I think this is the first edition of the paperback that was released. The one that you have, Al, I don't think has this, but it does have the original book cover. So that was the art that Charles Addams did for the magazine, and then it's the art for the hardcover of this book. If you were to buy that,
Yeah, I don't have that. I feel gypped.
It's pretty cool though, and they just never got around to it. Charles Addams ended up passing away. Bradbury had he had these characters in mind from the beginning. I'll talk about them in a second, but he had these stories he would write up, and he finally just compiled them. And this wasn't actually published in totality until 2001. So, quite recent as far as Bradbury's life goes and his body of work, So, in terms of the inspiration for the characters, he writes about basically his own family members. He had an aunt who was no more than like 10 years older than him. And every Halloween, they would like create their house into a haunted house, and he himself would be like the one dressed as a witch in the attic or something, and and they would scare the heck out of the kids, the trick or treaters to come by and everything. And he did have all these weird relatives and stuff, so that's where he gets the inspiration for this. And it is very much like his own spin on an Addams Family or a Munsters or something like that. Now, because of that, you do have to read this. If those in the chat, if you've been reading along or listening along, I've got the link in the description below again, where there's the free full audio of it read by John Glover on YouTube, which is wonderful. You do have to kind of think about it in terms of a different genre. It's very much sort of a fairy tale. You think about the Munsters, for example. You can't push the story logic too much. How could a Frankenstein monster and a vampire really copulate and have a werewolf? How's that really work out? You're not supposed to think about it in logical lines like that. You just roll with it.
Well, in biology, you have the 2 different kind of genes, and then you have the recessive.
I'm sure somebody could do something with it, but so a lot of the story is, and Bradbury's, of course, wonderful talent for poetic prose. It's you just kind of have to go with it. You don't try to pin it down. He's not writing writing something like Something Wicked This Way Comes, where it's more of a realistic town. October Country is itself a very mystical kind of place, but it is set in Illinois. It's not some other fantasy world. I mean, it is into our world, but it's sort of a magical realism where fantasy and reality kind of meet and cross over a bit. So that's the idea. So we'll get into the start here as this is compiled. We do start with this young boy named Timothy, who's in this house, and he is going up to the attic to basically pull his great so many greats grandmare out of her tomb.
1,000 times great grandmare.
1,000 times great grandmare, who's a mummy, out of her tomb so that she can be ready for this great big homecoming that's supposed to be happening soon. Then he wants to hear some stories and whatnot, and the Egyptian mummy did not twitch. She propped up. There's some great poetic. So I'll read this. Silence. The Egyptian mummy did not twitch. She stood propped in a dark corner like an ancient dried plum tree or an abandoned and scorched ironing board. Her hands and wrists trussed across her dry riverbed bosom. A captive of time, her eye slits of deep blue lapis lazuli behind thread-sewn lids, a glitter of remembrance as her mouth with a shriveled tongue wormed in it, whistled and sighed and whispered to recall every hour of every lost night for 1,000 years back when she was a pharaoh's daughter, dressed in spider linens and warm breath silks with jewels burning her wrists as she ran in the marble gardens to watch the pyramids erupt in the fiery Egyptian air. You gotta love that Bradbury prose. It's just wonderful.
It's so beautifully written.
It really is.
It's just so vivid with imagery and it's just gorgeous. It's a gorgeous prose, as you say.
You just love it. Now Timothy lifted the trapdoor, a lid of dust to call into the midnight attic world. Oh, beautiful one! A faint pollen of dust fell from the ancient mummy's lips. Beautiful no longer. Grandma, then. Not grandma merely, came the soft response. 1,000 times great grandmare. Better. The old voice dusted the silent air. Wine? Wine. Timothy rose a small flagon in his hands. The vintage child, the voice murmured. BC, grandmare. How many years? 2,000, almost 3 BC. Excellent. So getting
that's old wine.
Getting great grandmare sauced up so she can tell you some stories and dish on the family a little bit. So this little boy is excited to hear about the family, and he gets her into talking, and that was
Like
the
that,
prologue.
yeah, he doesn't really. It doesn't like really give her a full drink. It's like just little drops off his fingers onto
Yeah,
her lips.
yeah, just wetting her,
Mm-hmm.
wetting her prose there. Um, Dr. Gould says the Elliots are quite a bit of fun, to be honest. The Munsters are just a cartoon. The Addams Family are possible. The Elliots are who I'd want to spend time with, especially Uncle Einar. Uncle Einar steals the show. We'll get to him
Mm-hmm.
next week. He's pretty awesome. But I love that kind of genre. I love the Addams Family. I dearly love the Munsters. Truly, dearly love the Munsters. Hugely, and I love this when I came across it. I just I like that kind of this is Halloween for me. It's the spooky stuff, but not the horror stuff. Horror's boring to me. I really hate it. It's not even a visceral like, oh, it's so horrible, I'm so mad at it. No, it's just gross. I don't see the point. I really don't. That's just me. For me, this is really Halloween, you know. So these are little vignette chapters. That was the prologue. Now we move into chapter 1. And again, very sort of poetic. You're not looking, don't think for factual narrative. This clearly happened, and then that logically led to this, and then this, and then this, and so forth. But it's sort of a dreamscape of the house and how the house came to be. First, there was a tree that came to be. This lightning strike tree. The tree, some said, beckoned the house out of tumults of weather and excursions of time. Once the house was there, with its cellar roots deep in Chinese tomb yards, it was of such a magnificence, echoing facades last seen in London, that wagons intending to cross the river hesitated with their families, gazing up, and decided if this empty place was good enough for a papal palace, a royal monument, or a queen's abode, there hardly seemed a reason to leave. So the wagons stopped. The horses were watered, and when the families looked, they found their shoes as well as their soles had sprouted roots. So stunned were they by the house up there by the lightning-shaped tree that they feared if they left the house, would follow in their dreams and spoil all the waiting places ahead. Love that. Love that. It's just you can't leave that. It's so wonderful, you know. So this house, and then the town just kind of sprouted around it. You know, the house was there, sprouted, and the house comes around it. And then we get to Timothy wanting to know, okay, what about the family in the house? What about the family in the house? The house was then finished and capped before the stairs dissolved into light, and it stood alone on its promontory for many years, somehow failing to summon its future children. There must be a mouse in every warren, a cricket on every hearth, smoke in the multitudinous chimneys, and creatures almost human icing every bed. Then, mad dogs in yards, live gargoyles on roofs, all waited for some immense thunderclap of the long-parted storm to shout, "Begin!" And finally, many long years later, it did. And chapter 2 is about the first inhabitant of the house, a black cat by the name of Anuba. Anuba. And I'm not going to read much of this. I mean, it's great. I mean, I could, you know me with Bradbury. I could sit here and just read. I love the prose. I love the poetry of it. We had that problem with Something Wicked This Way Comes and Halloween Tree. But there's, so Anuba's this cat who was a mummified cat with Ramses, one of the Egyptian, and it's the dead cat, the ghost of the cat, whatever, slips out when the tombs are opened, and suddenly, starts to make its way over the seas in the boats with other dead cats and mice and whatnot, ghosts and whatnot, into the new world, and they all departed at Memphis, Tennessee, and Cairo, Illinois. Which I like. I just love this line though. Go ahead.
And I like the whole thing about the Egyptian maladies being spread, or the whole thing about the Egyptian curses and everything back when the pyramids were being opened.
Yeah. There's a really long sentence, but it's so beautiful here. When every chandelier was a lodge, and every shoe a compartment, when every bed ached to be occupied by strange snows, and every banister anticipated the downslide of creatures more pollen than substance, when every window warped with ages, distorted faces looking from shadows, when every empty chair seemed occupied by things unseen, when every carpet desired invisible footfalls, and the water pump on the back stoop inhaled, sucking vile liquors toward a surface, abandoned because of the possible upchuck of nightmares, when all the parquetry planks whined with the oilings of lost souls, and when all the weathercocks on the high roofs gyred in the wind and smiled griffin teeth, while death watch beetles ticked behind the walls. Only then did the royal cat named Anuba arrive. That's one wonderful sentence. The front door slammed, and there was Anuba, clothed in a fine pelt of arrogance, her quiet engine quieter, centuries before limousines. She paced the corridors, a noble creature, just come from a journey of 3,000 years. That's
So
pretty much
like any cat.
I was going to say, it's pretty much how I see every cat, you know, just that. I love that clothed in a
fine pelt of arrogance. I love that.
But there's something so otherworldly and regal about them, and that quiet engine, the purr, you know, and just come upon a journey from 1,000 years, you know, that's wonderful. I love that.
The black smokes firing the Egyptian air were haunted by Cleopatra's cousins who blew off, flaking the wind until the express reached Alexandria. It's just, oh my God, I wish I had his mind.
They don't make writers like him anymore. They truly don't. He's just wonderful. He's wonderful. I see Chris P is here with us. Welcome, Zetopia, Chris P, and Edward as well. Chris P says the house on the cover reminds him of the house from a house where the clock was in its walls. And it's a great influence. I mean, I'm blanking on the author now, but the author of A House with the Clock in Its Walls wrote a series of books about that young boy magician. Long before Harry Potter, these books were much more interesting, in my opinion, with the uncle and everything like that. And they did do the movie, of course, about the one. It's such a shame they didn't continue, because the series of books is really a lot of fun. But yeah, he definitely took some cues from Bradbury. You know, he was writing back in the day as well, so he wouldn't have read this. But you know, it's hard to believe anybody isn't touched by Bradbury's influence in some way if they're writing anything remotely speculative or anything at all. So, you know, that's pretty much the first chapter. I mean, you know, you can talk a little bit more about the poetry of it and whatnot, but that's, you know, that's the smokes that churned up the chimneys that night recalled the sounds and spectral sights of the Nefertiti Tut Express, thundering the Egyptian sands, scattering mummy linens popped wide as library books, informing the winds as they went. And that, of course, was only the first arrival. Then we get chapter 3, rather, the next arriver. And this is a wonderful character. It's actually very short. It's like a page. So I'm just going to read chapter 3, and then we'll talk about her in the next chapter. And who came second, Grandmere? Who came next? That's Timothy talking. The sleeper who dreams, child. What a fine name, Grandmere. Why did the sleeper come here? The high attic called her across the world. The attic above our heads, the second most important high garret that funnels the winds and speaks to its voice in the jet streams across the world. The dreamer had wandered those streams and storms, photographed by lightnings, anxious for a nest. And here she came, and there she is now. Listen. 1,000 times great Grandmere slid her lapis lazuli gaze upward. Listen. And above, in a further layer of darkness, some semblance of a dream stirred. And we do meet Ceci in the next chapter, a sleeper and her dreams. We get she kind of embodies the next few chapters for us. Long before there was anyone to listen, there was the high attic place, where the weather came in through broken glass, from wandering clouds going nowhere, somewhere, anywhere, and made the attic talk to itself, as it laid out a Japanese sand garden of dust across its planks. I love that imagery. What the breezes and winds whispered and murmured as they shook the poorly laid shingles, no one could say, except Ceci, who came soon after the cat to become the fairest and most special daughter of the family, as it settled in with her talent for touching other people's ears, thence inward to their minds, and still further their dreams. So she's a witch, basically, a night witch, whatever you want to call her, but she's a dreamer. She dreams and sends her spirit out, you know.
It's almost like astral projection.
That's right.
Yeah.
And she can go into other bodies, animals, humans, whatever. See what they see, experience what they see.
Anything, leaves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like anything she can embody.
I like this. She in sum was a goddess of wisdom, and the family, knowing this, treated her like porcelain, let her sleep all hours, knowing that when she woke, her mouth would echo 12 tongues and 20 sets of mind philosophies, enough to crack Plato at noon or Aristotle at midnight. So the image of Ceci, a dreamer, dreaming her life away, but her soul going out there and being able to gain all of this knowledge, wisdom, and experience, but it's not really her experience, it's others' experiences. Now, when we look at this book, you could just take this as it's just a fun read. It's like the Addams Family or something. Just, it's fun for Halloween. Just enjoy it. Okay, well, good for you. And that's one way you can read it and enjoy it if you want to. But I don't know what the heck you're doing here then, if that's what you're gonna, if that's all you want to get out of it. First of all, why would you go to a book study of any book like that? Just read it and enjoy it. You go to a book study to study it. And then for me, my own takes, especially being such a Bradbury fan, there's always layers there. There's always layers. And Ceci is kind of now, I'm not speaking allegorically. I'm not saying that this is what she represents and that's it. No, I'm just saying there's a picture here of a reader, of a dreamer. That's her vocation, is dreaming, and that's all she does. And she experiences so many people's other stories. It's amazing. And you can get caught up in that. You can get caught up in just experiencing other people's work and fictions and whatnot. But you don't get to really truly have agency of it yourself. And go ahead.
It's kind of like I said, someone who's a great reader, or in my existence, being someone who loves television and movies and becoming so entrenched in their stories that you almost lose yourself. So you actually see these people as real people, real characters, when you're basically just an observer, which is what she is. She observes, she learns, she doesn't really interact until.
And it's interesting because her name, Ceci, means blind or dim-sighted. So on the one hand, she sees all, right? She goes out and sees everything, and yet she's not really seeing with her own eyes or her own experience and agency and whatnot. Right. Even in this story we're going to get here, it's still sort of a struggle. But she does eventually the one real true experience she wants is to be in love. She wants to know what it's like to be in love, not just for others to be in love, but to herself to be in love. And here's where we get a little bit of the story logic. You just kind of have to roll with it, because suddenly we get more of her in the house there as the daughter. Well, if she's the second person to come into the house, how did her parents come later or whatever? Just roll with it, Okay.
Yeah, I know. But you were saying about being in love. I mean, it's actually more than not only being in love, but to be loved.
Yeah, back and forth.
Which is a big component that I think is not so much vocalized, but
to love and be loved. Yeah,
right.
And that is a big part of it. That's a huge part of it. So it's nearing the end of summer at one point. Farewell, summer, thought Ceci. I'll be in every living thing in the world tonight. Now she inhabited near crickets on the Towerpool roads, now prickled in dew on an iron gate. Love, she said, where is my love? She had said it at supper, and her parents had stiffened back in their chairs. Patience, they advised. Remember, you're remarkable. Our whole family is odd and remarkable. We must not marry with ordinary folk. We'd lose our dark souls if we did. You wouldn't want to lose your ability to travel by wish and desire, would you? Then be careful, careful. But in her high attic room, Ceci had touched perfume to her throat and stretched out, trembling and apprehensive, on her four-poster as a moon of the color of milk rose over Illinois country, turning rivers to cream and roads to platinum. Yes, she sighed. I'm the one of the odd family that flies nights like black kites. I can live in anything at all, a pebble, a crocus, a praying mantis. Now, the wind whipped her away over the fields and meadows. She saw the warm lights of cottages and farms glowing with twilight colors. If I can't be in love myself, she thought, because I'm odd, then I'll be in love through someone else. So really makes for an interesting plop into the next story, but it still follows that picture of a reader, because being in love through somebody else. What does it feel like to be in a war, in a fight, in love, or anything? You can get that experience through reading, but it's through somebody else's memories and writings and whatnot. So she eventually does. She's happening out. She's searching, and she finds this young girl by the name of Anne Leary, Leary, which is an older spelling of the word we have today, Leery, Leary, to be suspicious, to be hesitant, and these words are kind of work here because she inhabits Anne Leary goes into her, and she's says, it was a good body, this girl's. It held bones of finest slender ivory, hidden and roundly fleshed. This brain was like a pink tea rose hung in darkness, and there was cider wine in this mouth. The lip lay firm on the white teeth, and the brows arched neatly at the world, and the hair blew soft and fine on her milky neck. The pores knit small and close, the nose tilted at the moon, and the cheeks glowed like small fires. The body drifted with feather balances from one motion to another, and seemed always humming to itself. Being in this body was like basking in a hearth fire, living in the purr of a sleeping cat, stirring in warm creek waters that flowed by night to the sea. This is now becoming a story. If we can look at Ceci in general as a picture of somebody dreaming their life away, reading their life away, or whatever, now we have a story of a coming of age, discovering the sensuality of your own body, or the sensuality of your own identity and whatnot. And we have at the end of summer, this young girl, Anne Leary, who's suddenly possessed by this night witch, which is kind of a picture of how, puberty comes upon us and possesses us, the hormones, the desire for to love and to be loved or whatever, can come upon you like a possession. So she's talking about how wonderful this is. And Anne Leary almost starts to kind of realize there's somebody in her. Not quite, but sort of. Yes, thought Ceci. What? Asked the girl as if she'd heard. What's your name? Asked Ceci carefully. Anne Leary, the girl twitched. Now, why should I say that out loud? Anne, whispered Ceci. And you're going to be in love. As if to answer this, a great roar sprang from the road, a clatter and a ring of wheels on gravel. A tall man drove up in a car, holding the wheel with his monstrous arms, his smile glowing across the yard. Anne, is that you, Tom? Who else? He leaped from the car laughing. I'm not speaking to you. Anne whirled the bucket in her hand, slopping. No, cried Ceci. Anne froze. She looked at the hills and the first stars. She stared at the man named Tom. Ceci made her drop the bucket. Look what you've done. Tom ran up. Look what you made me do. He wiped her shoes with a kerchief, laughing. Get away, she kicked at his hands, but he laughed again, and gazing down on him from miles away, Ceci saw the turn of his head, the size of his skull, the flare of his nose, the shine of his eyes, the girth of his shoulders, and the hard strength of his hands doing his delicate thing with the handkerchief. Peering down from the secret attic of his lovely head, Ceci yanked a hidden copper ventriloquist wire, and the pretty mouth opened wide. Thank you. Oh, so you do have manners. No, the smell of leather on his hands, the smell of the open car on his clothes. Ceci's becoming quite taken, and let's just say it turned on by the masculine energy and movements and body of this man, Tom.
Now, the whole thing with the ventriloquist wire is not a true wire. It's more of a metaphor as to having her control.
Yeah, she just controlled Anne's mouth at that moment. Yeah, just a poetic way of turning it. And it goes back and forth. Anne trying to resist this man, and Ceci trying to will her into being nice to him, and even to the point of going to the dance with him that night. Not for you, no, said Anne. Hush, speak gently, said Ceci. She moved Anne's fingers towards Tom's head. Anne scratched them back. I've gone mad. You have, he nodded, smiling but bewildered. Were you going to touch me? I don't know. Oh, go away. Her cheeks glowed with pink charcoals. Run, I'm not stopping you. Tom, run, I'm not stopping you. Tom got up. Changed your mind? Will you go to the dance with me tonight? No, said Anne. Yes, cried Ceci. I've never danced. I've never worn a long gown all rustly. I want to dance all night. I've never known what it's like to be in a woman dancing. Father and mother would not permit. Dogs, cats, locusts, leaves, everything else in the world at one time or another I've known, but never a woman in the spring, never on a night like this. Oh, please, we must dance. She spread her thought like fingers on a hand within a new glove. Yes, said Anne Leary. I don't know why, but I'll go with you tonight. Now, quick, inside, cried Ceci. Wash, tell your folks, get your gown, into your room. Mother, said Anne, I've changed my mind. Now, we're going to go through this, but I want to highlight this back and forth in Anne, this kind of like schizophrenic behavior of hers, because she's got Ceci in her. And again, it really is quite a picture of young women, men too, to a certain degree, but young women going through this, the change of, where they visually or start to recognize the sensuality of their own bodies, the sexuality of people around them, recognizing boys and so forth. Anne wasn't quite ready to do that herself, but Ceci's, Ceci's all ready. And listen to the prose here. Ceci is inside Anne's body, getting her ready, bathing her and everything, and gazing at her naked body, at the senses around. And this isn't supposed to be a sexual thing. You can't take it too far like that. It's not, and nothing sexual is happening here. We're just Anne in the bathtub. But Ceci is reveling in the sensuality of it all. Because remember, she's just a dreamer in spirit. She would never feel these senses of her own, so she's feeling them through Anne. Let's see. Then she was in the tub, and the soap creaming on her white seal shoulders, small nests of soap beneath her arms, and the flesh of her warm breasts moving in her hands, and Ceci moving the mouth, making the smile, keeping the actions going. There must be no pause, or the entire pantomime might fall in ruins. Anne Leary must be kept moving, doing, acting. Wash here, soap there, now out. You, Anne caught herself in the mirror, all whiteness and pinkness like lilies and carnations. Who are? A girl of 17. Ceci gazed from her violet eyes. You can't see me. Do you know I'm here? Anne Leary shook her head. I've loaned my body to a last of summer witch for sure. Close, laughed Ceci. Now dress. So Anne sort of knows, but doesn't know. She comes close to it sometimes,
It's like that fight. It's almost like you're fighting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although she doesn't realize she's actually fighting someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I love this story so much. I want to just read the whole thing, but I won't. But the dance happens, and first when Tom arrives, Ceci wants to kind of feel like what it might be like in Tom's mind on the way to this dance. But in that briefest moment that she leaves, Anne's like telling her mom, "No, I've changed my mind. I'm not going." So Ceci has to run back into her head, and yes, you are, and keep it going. But the dance is interesting. Ceci's battling with her the whole time. And
you get this idea that there's a little history between Anne and Tom.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to read a little bit of that. So it's funny, their conversation. I'll try to read some of it, but skim some of it. They climbed and sat together in his open car. Anne, he said, taking her hands trembling. Anne. But the way he said her name, it was as if it wasn't her name. He kept glancing into her pale face, and now her eyes were open again. I used to love you, he said. I know. But you've always been distant, and I didn't want to be hurt. We were very young, said Anne. No, I mean, I'm sorry, said Ceci. What do you mean? Tom dropped his hands on his frustration. Like, oh my gosh, could you pick a personality to use here for please? I don't know, Anne says, and oh, but I know, said Ceci. You're tall, and you're the finest looking man in all the world. This is a good evening. This is an evening I'll always remember, being with you. She put out the alien cold hand to find his reluctant hand again and bring it back and warm it and hold it very tight. And Tom's trying to make sense of this. But tonight you're here, you're there, 1 minute one way, the next minute another. I want to take you to the dance tonight for old time's sake. I meant nothing by it when I first asked you. And then, when we were standing at the well, I knew something had changed, really changed about you. There was something new and soft, something, he groped for a word. I don't know, I can't say. Something about your voice, and I know I'm in love with you again. No, said Ceci, with me. And that's the real tragedy of it, because that is who he's in love with. It's Ceci in her, and that was the change he saw in her, or the Ceci-like person he wanted Anne to be, So it goes back and forth. It's so great. I've got a job 100 miles from here. Will you miss me? Yes, said Anne and Ceci. So they both agreed on that. May I kiss you goodbye? Yes, said Ceci before anyone else could speak. He placed his lips to the strange mouth. He kissed the strange mouth and was trembling. Anne sat like a white statue. Anne, said Ceci, move, hold him. Anne sat like a carved doll in the moonlight. Again, he kissed her lips. So Anne's resisting this. No, I'm not. We're not doing anything more than this. I do love you, whispered Ceci. I'm here. It's me. You see me in her eyes, and I love you as if she never will. So, Ceci's trying to talk to Tom outside of Anne and trying to get through to him about this. And it's interesting. It's beautiful, too, how it's written. He says, the lines in his face kind of softened from it as he looks at her. Yes, she said. He says, for a moment, I thought. He put his hands to his eyes. Never mind. Shall I take you home now? Yes, please. So they're about to say goodbye there at home. And Tom, said Anne at last. What? He said coldly at the road, the trees, the skies and stars. If ever in years to come, at any time, if you're in Greentown, Illinois, a few miles from here, will you do me a favor? What? Will you do me the favor of stopping and seeing a friend of mine? Anne Leary said this haltingly, awkwardly. Why? She's a good friend. I've told her of you. I'll give her your address. Give you her address. When the car stopped at the farm, he drew forth a pencil and paper from a small purse and wrote in the moonlight, pressing the paper to her knee. Can you read it? He glanced at the paper and nodded bewilderingly. He read the words. Will you visit her someday? Anne's mouth moved. Someday. Promise? What has this to do with us? He cried savagely. What do I want with names and papers? He crumpled the paper into a tight ball. Oh, please, promise, begged Ceci. Promise, said Anne. All right. Now let it be, he shouted. I'm tired, thought Ceci. I can't stay. I must go home. I can only travel a few hours each night, moving, flying. But before I go, said Anne. She kissed Tom on the lips. This is me kissing you, said Ceci. And again, so does Tom figures out something's going on, but doesn't really know what's happening here. And again, if you're looking at this as a picture of sort of young love or that coming of age and dealing with, the hormones and whatnot, on the one hand, it does come upon, men and women like you're being suddenly possessed by somebody else, On the other hand, the people that you're in love with watching, or you think you're in love with, watching them kind of go through this, it is a little bit, this is getting my Jungian hat on here. It's the anima, you're looking for your anima, your ideal woman inside that woman, or animus for men, from women, looking for the ideal man inside that. And are you really in love with them or in love with your ideal that you think is in them? You're projecting in them or is in them for a moment or whatever, so it's just such a loaded story. I love it for that reason. So Tom goes away. And then at the end here, Tom, her weakening mind flew into Nightbird this is Ceci again, under the trees and over deep fields of wild mustard. Have you still got the paper, Tom? Will you come by someday, some year, sometime to see me? Will you know me then? Will you look in my face and remember where it was you saw me last and know that you love me as I love you with all my heart for all time? She paused in the cool night air, a million miles from towns and people, above farms and continents and rivers and hills. Tom, softly. Tom was asleep. It was deep night. His suit was hung on a chair, and in one silent, carefully upflung hand upon the window white pillow by his head was a small piece of paper with writing on it. Slowly, a fraction of an inch at a time, his fingers closed down upon it and held it tightly. And he did not even stir or notice when a black bird faintly, wondrously beat softly for a moment against the clear moon crystals of the window pane, then, fluttering quietly, stopped and flew away toward the east, over the sleeping earth. Wonderful, wonderful story. And it's the first proper narrative we get in the book, in terms of scene. We got Anuba arriving and a bit of narrative there. But with Ceci, we get a proper narrative. It's a beautiful story, so beautifully done. And as you said, Al, what was the first thing you were asking me after you read it?
Are we going to see Tom again?
We shall see.
It's that Hallmark movie lover in me that just needs something to happen.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Melissa Harris says Jake doesn't like love stories, but likes this one.
Why am I picturing Fred Savage or whatever in Princess Bride? The kissing scene.
Elijah Brown says he finds Ceci's romantic story heartwarming yet kind of disturbing. Yeah, there's that too. There's a sadness about it. I mean, it's almost something I can relate to, being someone who feels trapped in this body in a place, and you can't really go out. But this is kind of the way of astral projection is through the Wi-Fi. And this was written before that. So yeah, the internet is kind of an astral projection. That's a great analogy. Wonderful. Yeah. And yet real connection can be made, right? She made a real connection with Tom, so yeah. So we got 3 more chapters left for the night. One's just a page here in a moment, but we move on from Ceci for a moment. We're going to come back to them all. We're building the idea of the family, and we're going to get more stories with all the different relatives and everything, and more of Ceci, certainly. So Timothy asked Grandmere now, and me, Grandmere, said Timothy, did I come in through the high attic window? You did not come, child. You were found, left at the door in a basket, with Shakespeare for a foot prop and Poe's usher as a pillow. with a note pinned to your house, pinned to your blouse. Historian. You were sent, child, to write us up, list us in lists, register our flights from the sun, our love of the moon. But the house, in a way, did call you. Your small fist hungered to write. Remember, we talked about how Bradbury loves to put himself in his books in some way or another. Not like poor writing in that kind of sense where you just totally clearly put yourself in, not like, I am Starfire or something like that, the nonsense that ideologues do today. But he put some aspect of himself. There was a lot of him in Faber from Fahrenheit 451. There was a lot of him in the father from Will's father from Something Wicked This Way Comes, and a lot of him in Moundshroud, from the Halloween Tree, or perhaps even in Tom Skellington as a young boy. So this Timothy is the writer, the one who's there to chronicle these people. He's a human, so he's the Marilyn of the Munsters family, right? He's not one of them. He's not a ghost or a living or a monster at all. He's a human boy, but he's there to chronicle. And chapter 7 tells us a little bit about this story. So we get the spider, Iraq, weaving just a huge web of webway of spider webs, that it can swing to and swing down in and whatnot throughout the large house.
My cousin.
Your cousin, Alrac's cousin. That's right. But eventually there was a knock at the door, and there was a baby left at the door. And the woman of the house, the mother, oh, look, she cried, and held the mirror to the small babe's cheek. And lo, there was total surprise. Curse all everything, said the gaunt, pale husband. His face is reflected. He is not, you think you'd held the mirror to see if there's breath. He is not like us. No, but still, said the wife. The small blue eyes looked up at them, repeated in the mirror glass. Leave it, said the husband. And they might have pulled back and left it to wild dogs and feral cats, save that at the last instant the dark lady said, no, and reached to lift, turn, and deliver the basket, babe and all, up the path and into the house, and down into the hall of the room that became an instant that nursery. For it was covered on all four walls and topmost ceiling with images of toys put in Egyptian tombs to nurse at the play of Pharaoh's sons, who traveled 1,000 years of darkness and had need of joyous instruments to fill dark time and brighten their mouths. And she's carrying the child, and she says, beginning of this sentence here. And touching the basket, the mistress of the winter-autumn house said, was there not a saint with a special light and promise of life called Timothy? Yes. So, said the dark lady, lovelier than saints, which stops my doubt and stills my fear, not saint, but Timothy he is. Yes, child. And hearing his name, the newcomer in the basket gave a glad cry. What he's referring to is Saint Timothy is the Timothy of the Bible, known for being the patron saint of digestive issues. None of that really kind of makes you think of this. You might think a different name of a writer or something, but where he gets this from is 2 Timothy verse 1, or 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 1. Paul, an apostle of Christ Jesus, by the will of God, according to the promise of life which is in Christ Jesus, to Timothy, my beloved child. So he's playing with the wording of the verse a little bit, so that Timothy has this promise of life. He's playing with the wording of it. Of course, Paul's talking about the promise of spiritual, eternal Christian life, but she's drawing on the idea that he's alive. He's got a promise of life in him that we don't, because we're dead or we're monsters or so forth, And then at the end of the chapter, though, we have one more which rose to the high attic and caused Ceci this is one more thing. Ceci here, okay. Hearing his name, a newcomer in the basket gave a glad cry, which rose to the high attic and caused Ceci in the midst of her dreams to turn in her tidal sleep and lift her head, to hear that strange glad cry again, which caused her mouth to shape a smile. This is long before she's been out with Tom and Anne or anything. For while the house stood strangely still, all wondering what might befall them, and as the husband did not move, and the wife leaned down, half wondering what next to do, Ceci quite instantly knew that her travels were not enough, that beginning now there was seeing and hearing and tasting, there must be someone to share it all and tell. And here the teller was, his small cry giving announcement to the fact that no matter what might show and tell, his small hand, grown strong and wild and quick, would capture it and scribble it down. So with this assured sense, Ceci sent a gossamer of silent thought and welcome to reach the babe and wrap it around and let it know that they were as one, So Ceci welcomes this as a dreamer, as someone, a reader. you know, quote unquote, if we're looking at this or as that picture, she's wanting someone to write the things that she has in her head. You know, again, it's sort of a step removed of I can dream it or read other people, but I'm not going to write it myself, you know. So
Is my mic? Oh, she was asking. Sorry, Santa Gray was asking if my mic was down. I don't.
you sound good to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I know you're enjoying the book, so I'm kind of letting you roll, and maybe I'm just not talking much.
No, I don't think that. It's probably, I don't know. Yeah, tell us how the level sounds now, Santa Graver. I think it sounds, in my earphones anyway, it sounds good. But yeah, she says Bradbury's prose depicts things that are strange and all too familiar at the same time. Love that. Yeah, it's the uncanny, right? And you can take uncanny to the level of horror, which that's not what this is. This is sort of to the level of magical realism. You know, it's the everyday world around you, but it's not quite. There is some spectacular things breaking forth into it, you know.
Yeah. And one thing in this chapter would quite mention it when they were talking about how many rooms this house has.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
To say 1,000 would exaggerate, but 100 was nowhere near truth. Mm-hmm. 159 seems an agreeable amount.
That's random. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and just read the whole next chapter because it's just about a page and a half, and it's the last chapter that we're doing for tonight. It's the last arrival at the house that we're going to chronicle anyway. As there was one spider in the house, there had to be a singular mouse. Escaped from life into mortality and a first dynasty Egyptian tomb, this small ghost rodent at last fled free when some curious Bonaparte soldiers broke the seal and let out great gusts of bacterial air which killed the troops and confused Paris long after Napoleon departed and the Sphinx prevailed, with French gunpox in her face and fate splayed her paws. Love that beautiful poetic way of describing the history of what happened there. The ghost mouse, so dislodged from darkness, excursioned into seaport and shipped out with but not among the cats from Marseille and London and Massachusetts, and a century later arrived just as the child Timothy cried on the family's doorstep. This mouse rattle-tapped under the doorsill to be greeted by an alert eight-legged thing, its multiple knees fiddling above its poisonous head. Stunned, Mouse froze in place and wisely did not move for hours. Then, when the arachnid papal ring presence, tired of surveillance and departed for breakfast flies, Mouse vanished into the woodwork, rattling, scratching through secret panelings to the nursery. There Timothy the babe, in need of more fellows, no matter how small or strange, welcomed him beneath the blanket to nurse and befriend him for life. So it was that Timothy, no saint, grew and became a young man-child, with 10 candles lit on his anniversary cake. And the house and the tree and the family and the great-grandmare and Ceci in her attic sands and Timothy with his attendant Arac in one ear and Mouse on his shoulder and Anuba on his lap waited for the greatest arrival of all. And that's what we're gonna come to next week, the next chapter, which is going to be the homecoming, the big chapter there. But I did forget to read one part of Timothy's chapter about Iraq. This is where that papal ring imagery comes here. I love this. And a spider, heretofore unseen, crept from the blankets, probed all the airs about, then ran to fasten on the small child's hand as a nightmare papal ring to bless some future court and all its shadow courtiers, and held so still it seemed but stone of ebony against pink flesh. And Timothy, all unaware of what his finger wore, knew small refinements of large Ceci's dreams. So these creatures coming around Timothy, the live one, you know, but yet his little friends there, you know, which I love that imagery of. We are going to see too. I'll just mention this. We are going to see in this book, like, you know, I don't think anybody here would have this reaction to it, but you know, you can imagine readers from a pretty staunch, unread, strict Christian background that's kind of unread or unused to literary techniques and whatnot. You'll hear things like likening the spider to a dark papal ring. Well, isn't that like an antichrist or whatever? Or you know, the part about, you know, you'll lose your dark soul. We're not supposed to have dark souls or whatever. And in the homecoming chapter, they pray to the darkness, you know, and well, isn't that Satan? You know, you can't think about it. That's not what this literally means at all. This is just that spooky fun that they're the monsters. So of course they don't pray to light, they pray to darkness. It doesn't mean anything beyond that. It's
Yeah. It's like
it's
Morticia. It's like Morticia snipping off the rose and keeping the thorns. It's
yeah,
just what they do.
yeah. Or giving Wednesday an axe to go play with her brother, or something. Not really wanting him to hack him to pieces, or if he does, he magically lives through it or something. So, yeah. Sound Engraver hates spiders. She said, I should be creeped out by the spider ring, but it's kind of endearing. Yeah, I like the fact that the spider just sits in his ear.
I'm sure my avatar is very disquieting then. I'm sure.
I don't know. That face. I never shared your whole, made that bigger for everybody to see. You did a good job.
It's just my face blended into his head.
But it's so funny because it's this spider, and then like, oh, yep. Like I almost imagined that, putting a spider under a microscope, I would see that staring back at me or something. That'd be a bit of a nightmare, actually.
Hey. I watched The Fly earlier this week and kind of had a, I don't know, similar feel. Help me.
Oh, so, yeah, I agree. Dr. Gould said Bradbury can take a pair of sneakers and turn them into a flash of lightning. So taking this family of supernaturals and eerie shadows and giving a human child their friendship is a dark sweetness. It is. It's really cool. Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. Edward wants to know if you use Photoshop to do those. No, you use other like free platforms, right?
Yeah, that I just use Paint.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I use free platforms for my my thumbnails too and everything. So
I do 99% of what I do just using Paint. Mm-hmm. I do have what's that for GIMP 2.0, the free one, but I barely know how to use it. I use it for a couple of functions on it, but beyond that, I use Paint.
Yeah. Before I forget, and I'll talk about the chat here and chat with some people here in a moment, but for next week, we're going to do just 3 chapters. We're going to do chapters 9 through, actually just 2 chapters, chapters 9 through 10.
Really? That's short.
Well, wait, maybe. Hang on. Did I get that wrong?
Because I was kind of like, doing the same amount. I was thinking maybe like 13 up to.
Well,
up
the
to
problem.
13.
The problem is that if we did 13, we still have 2 weeks left, and then we'd have very little to read for those 2 weeks. And there's a lot to talk about in chapter 10 and chapter 9.
There's a big afterword. I didn't know how big the afterword was.
Yeah, so I think to keep the 4 as close to even as possible, going by the end of chapters, with just 2 chapters for next week, and then we'll divide the rest up between the last 2 weeks. But there's, like I said, Homecoming and chapter 10.
So 9 and 10.
9 and 10, yeah. Homecoming and West of October. A whole lot goes down. It's a lot of fun to read. So
it's pretty substantial. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to be doing for next week. Cedric, or no, there's somebody said hi here. I just want to say Cedrez Moss. Welcome to you as well. Edward says, when is the next inspiration of heroes? I don't know. I've got some people, lots of people on deck and everything. But I just haven't gotten back around to them. Yeah. They'll happen when they happen. That's yeah. But I do want to get back to them. I just don't want to do them too often or too much because they'll kind of overtake the channel with live streams where you need, I'm having a problem enough of that as well with the book studies. But I do have a standalone video coming between tonight and tomorrow night. And then tomorrow night for the live stream, I don't really have anything geeky in mind to talk about. I just don't care about anything that's happening right now. But if I can find something, then I will talk about it. Otherwise, yesterday marked the tragic loss of Eddie Van Halen. It's been 1 year now, the great Eddie Van Halen. And remember, I did a stream of part 1 of the Van Halen hard rock comics back in the day, which were the Roth era. And I kept saying I was going to do the Hagar era, which is, my personal favorite, Sammy Hagar and everything. I was going to do that soon, and I never did. So I might do that again Friday just to talk about that, talk about some more Van Halen and rock stuff and everything, because I can use those hard rock comics as a way to kind of bridge into that a bit. And, of course, we can mark David Lee Roth's retirement that he just announced and stuff like that. So, so that might be what I talk about tomorrow night. I don't know. We'll see. But what about you, Al? What's going on this weekend with you?
Well, this Saturday, we are on my channel, Big Al Presents, for a rewatch of the 1986 film Troll, which had Noah Hathaway from the Neverending Story playing a kid named Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
before all this other Harry Potter stuff came along.
Yeah.
But yeah, fun, a fun, bizarre little film, and really like it, and been wanting to watch it for a while, and finally thought October was the perfect time to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I dropped a new review last night. If people haven't had a chance to see that yet,
Oh yeah,
for the film Greenland,
mm-hmm.
which just kind of went right off the rate. Didn't even get on the radar too much, I don't think, for many people, but deserves some attention. I think it was a really good film.
I don't know anything about it. I will put the link to your channel here, though.
Thank you. But yeah, great. Yeah, Greenland was good. Greenland was a pleasant surprise, and Gerard Butler, Morena Baccarin.
I do want to get back to those heroic inspiration video or inspiration of heroes videos soon. Edward's one of the people that I'll get on there at one point too, but I've got an apologist, one of my favorite apologists, who's agreed to come on like in November at some point, and got some other people that I'm reaching out to. But it's just a matter of
Will that be on CBG?
On this channel,
or?
This channel, because we're just talking about what heroes inspired them, everything.
Oh, okay.
Sound Engraver here is mentioning her talking about art on her channel Monday nights at 9:30, and here's the link to her channel as well. So drop in there. And yeah, Sound Engraver's been slaying spiders out here. She's not used to country life. There are some spiders, especially this time of year when they're wanting to come inside, because it's getting a little chillier. And every time I walk her home or whatever, I've got to go in and inspect the place, make sure there's no spiders around. But she's pretty good. She'll slay them when she needs to.
You should be,
as a good boyfriend should. Absolutely.
There you go. Being her knight in shining armor.
Indeed.
Slaying foul beasties.
Happy to do it. So yeah, if you guys like Troll is a fun movie. A rewatch of that on Al's channel this Saturday night. I should be back tomorrow night for a rewatch. We did start Two Towers, the book study on the Catholic Bible Geek channel, my other channel, on Tuesday. We started that just this last Tuesday, so you can go over to that channel and
Smeagol.
Yeah, it was
made his first appearance.
So disturbing. I'll put the link to that.
Still gotta may have an old favorite come by next week. I don't know. I got a couple of the other ones in mind, but we'll see.
This is the link to my Catholic Bible Geek channel, which is religious content. So, be warned. But if you're interested in a Tolkien book study, we are doing Lord of the Rings right now. We just started Two Towers. And you can find our study of Fellowship and The Hobbit even on there as well, So Soundgear says, sorry, I'm sitting in your chair, Prof. That is okay. That's okay. I'll just stick with this very uncomfortable folding
sure he doesn't mind a bit, Sound Engraver.
Nope. Not at all. But all right. I'm gonna go ahead and stop it there. With this book, we might the studies might be a little shorter. I don't know. Next week we do have those two really good chapters to talk about, so who knows? But you just have to kind of pace yourself with the genre of the book in terms of how deeply you go in and how much you want to read great passages and stuff. So yeah.
This one, the prose is so good. It's you really need to highlight some of it. It's just so good.
Yeah. Oh, Elijah Brown's talking about the heroic inspiration videos where I talk about the inspiration we draw from specific heroes. Yeah. I'd need to do some more of those. Definitely. Yeah, they were fun. People like those too. So I don't know what's coming next. I don't even know. Gotta go look. I'm not very organized, but I just so that's why I don't like I'll give people a heads up, like I gave Edward a heads up. Yeah, I get you on at some point, but I don't really have a schedule or anything, because I just, that starts to stress me out. Like I can't keep things ordered and organized and stuff. Sorry about that. I tell my students, I have to apologize about that to my students all the time too. But how great is it that you have a fun professor like me, That's the trade-off. That's the trade-off. That's how wonderful you get to come to this great channel for all this content. The trade-off is who knows what's coming next. But that's all for now, folks. Any last words, Al?
No, just hope people stop by on Saturday to watch Troll. Hope you have a copy of it. Like I said, it's only our commentary as we're watching it because YouTube has its rules. But it's a lot. It's the movie, obviously. Yeah. And like I said, check out my review for Greenland. It's and hopefully some more are to come. Try to do at least one a week. Trying to get into all depends on what I actually get the chance to watch too.
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad you're putting out that stuff. That's good. But I've got to go eat now. Alyssa's finally asleep. I didn't get a chance to have a proper dinner before she passed out, and I was able to run and get set up for the stream. So that's what's happening now. But thanks to you guys for hanging out with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Hope you liked it. Like I said, the link to buy the book is in the description below, or the link to the free full audio of the book is in the description below too. If you just want to read through or hear at least the entirety of what we talked about tonight, it's a lot of fun. So recommend it. And come back next week for the next installment. So until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love.
Bye.